When humanity first entered the galaxy, no one took them seriously. The great empires that had ruled the stars for thousands of years looked at the humans and saw nothing but another small world species that would bow to the first show of strength. They had seen many young races come and go. Some tried to fight and were crushed. Some submitted and became servants. But humanity was something different. Their history was filled with pain and survival, and they had learned long ago to face fear with courage and even with laughter. When the first human ambassador ship arrived at the massive Galactic Council station, it was small compared to the grand ships of other species. The vessel named Horizon carried only a few hundred crew, led by Captain Laura Dean, a woman who had seen more than her share of battles during humanity's push to the stars. Beside her was Commander Alex Brooks, who was calm, smart, and always ready with a small joke even in tense moments. And there was Lieutenant Karen Doyle, the youngest pilot on board, who was nervous but eager to prove herself. The crew looked at the shining silver station that floated near a blue star. Its structure so large it looked like a small moon. Aliens from dozens of worlds lived and worked inside. Their ships came and went, and their banners waved proudly in the station's vast docking ring. When Horizon approached, a voice came over the channel, deep and cold, ordering them to stop and wait for clearance. Laura nodded calmly and told her crew to hold position. She knew they were being tested when permission finally came. They docked and walked into the halls of the station. The air smelled strange, filled with unknown scents, and many alien eyes turned toward them. Some looked curious, some amused, and some full of open contempt. Captain Laura walked straight ahead, her steps steady, her crew followed. They were met by tall guards with dark armor, members of the Varnic species, insect-like beings who loved order and power. One of them pointed toward the lower section of the hall, where the seats for new species were placed. Laura thanked him politely and took her place there. The other aliens whispered among themselves, saying that humans were still children who did not know their place. The council meeting began. At the center of the Great Hall stood the Supreme Chancellor, Koran of the Rithari Empire. His scales shimmered in gold under the bright lights, and his voice echoed through the hall as he spoke about the importance of order in the galaxy. Then he turned his attention to humanity, calling them reckless, undisciplined, and unpredictable. He said that humans had already broken minor trade rules before joining the council, and that they needed to pay a fine to prove they respected the law. The other delegates laughed softly. Laura stood up, her face calm, her voice steady. She said that humanity respected peace but would not accept unfair treatment. Corin smiled and told her that resistance would only bring trouble. The hall grew quiet. Then Commander Alex whispered a small joke under his breath. And Laura smiled. She looked at Corin and said, "If you think we can be scared into obedience, then you do not know humans." The council fell silent. The delegates looked shocked, and then from the back of the room came a sound that no one expected. It was laughter, human laughter, loud and clear. One of the trade delegates named Ethan Cole laughed first. Soon others joined him. Their laughter filled the hall. It was not angry. It was not mocking. It was simply amused, as if the entire attempt to intimidate them was ridiculous. The alien faces turned cold. They could not understand what was so funny. To them, fear was the normal answer to power. But humans had learned to laugh at fear because they had faced worse things on their own world. Storms, wars, hunger, and endless struggle. After the meeting ended, Corin sent a warning to Earth that any further defiance would have consequences. But humanity ignored it. Instead, they worked harder, building faster ships and expanding their trade routes beyond council control. When alien patrols tried to stop human freighters, the humans simply found new paths. Some of them even made friends with alien smugglers who admired their bravery. Soon human goods started appearing everywhere, cheap and strong. Human tools, fabrics, and medicines became popular because they worked better and cost less. Many aliens bought them even though the council tried to ban them. The humans were creative. When the Rithari blockaded one trade lane, humans went through asteroid fields and found new shortcuts. They joked about it later, calling it the scenic route. Stories began to spread of human captains who refused to be bullied. One famous story told of Captain Daniel Price, who was stopped by a Varnix warship demanding payment for safe passage. Daniel simply offered them a box of cookies. Saying it was all he had, the Varnix commander was angry. But when Daniel told him with a grin that they tasted better than bribes, the alien officers actually laughed. That story traveled through the stars and became a symbol of how humans turned every threat into humor. No matter how hard the galaxy tried, nothing seemed to break their spirit. Colonies grew on harsh worlds where no one else dared to live. On frozen planets, humans built warm shelters and farms on toxic moons. They created filters and lived under domes. Other species watched with disbelief as the humans kept expanding, not with fear but with smiles. The phrase "humans are strange" began to spread across the galaxy. One council member even said that humans were too foolish to fear death. But another replied that maybe they were too strong to let fear control them. Months later, another summit was held and Captain Laura returned. This time she walked through the station with even more confidence. Other delegates whispered as she passed, some with respect, others with annoyance. When Koran saw her again, his tone was softer. He said the council had decided to welcome humanity officially. Though he warned them not to let pride cloud their judgment, Laura nodded politely. She thanked him and said humans valued peace but would never forget who they were. When the meeting ended, her crew gathered near the window of the station. Looking out at the stars, Alex smiled and said quietly, "They tried to scare us, Laura, and now they want to be our friends." Laura laughed and said, "Let them try again." "We'll still be laughing." Their ship departed soon after, leaving behind a quiet hall where alien delegates sat thinking about what had just happened. Some of them began to understand that intimidation no longer worked the same way it once did, because the humans had changed the rules. They had faced the galaxy's arrogance and answered with laughter, and that laughter was louder than any threat. It carried through the stars, a reminder that sometimes strength is not shown by anger or fear, but by the ability to smile when others try to break you. As Horizon entered hyperspace and the blue light filled the windows, Captain Laura closed her eyes for a moment and thought about Earth. She imagined the people back home, working, dreaming, and laughing. She whispered softly that the galaxy would never forget the day humanity refused to be scared, and as the ship disappeared into the stars, its trail shone like a line of light across the dark sky and marked the beginning of a new era, where humans would no longer be seen as weak, but as the species that could laugh even when the universe tried to make them kneel. Months passed after the first meeting between humanity and the Galactic Council, and the laughter that had echoed through the Grand Hall that day was still being talked about across the stars. Many called it foolish, others called it brave, but those who had seen the look in the humans' eyes understood it was something more. It was the sound of a species that had refused to be broken. While the old powers of the galaxy whispered in their courts and councils, humanity kept working. They built faster ships, better machines, and stronger cities on distant worlds. They were a small species compared to the vast empires that had ruled for ages, but they had something others had lost long ago: the hunger to move forward no matter how hard the road became. Captain Laura Dean and her crew had returned to Earth, and the world had changed. Screens all across the planet showed footage from the council meeting. The moment when humans laughed in the face of the galaxy's arrogance had become a symbol of unity. People in the streets talked about it with pride. Children in schools drew pictures of ships flying among alien stars. And for the first time in a long time, humanity felt truly united under one purpose. Even the nations that once argued found common ground in the idea that humanity had finally stepped out into the galaxy and refused to bow in Washington City. Laura stood in front of the United Earth Command headquarters. The air was cool, and a soft breeze moved the flags on the tall towers. She was called to meet Admiral Carter, the man who led the fleet's expansion program. He was older, with gray hair and calm eyes. He had watched humanity's growth from the first days of space exploration. When Laura entered his office, he smiled faintly and said that she had made the council nervous. Laura replied that maybe they needed to be reminded that humans were not pets. Carter nodded and said that the council had increased pressure on human colonies. Several trade convoys were being harassed by alien patrols pretending to enforce new laws. He then handed her a data chip. It contained orders for her next mission. Humanity needed someone to escort the colony ship Pioneer to a new world near the border of Varnic space. The colony was to be the largest one yet, and they expected trouble. Laura accepted the mission without hesitation. She had seen what fear looked like, and she refused to let her people feel it again. The next weeks were filled with preparation. Horizon was repaired and upgraded, new shields, new drives, and a small fleet of escort ships were added. Commander Alex Brooks worked night and day with the engineers, joking with the crew even when the stress was high. Lieutenant Karen Doyle had grown more confident, her hands steady as she ran flight drills again and again. The ship felt alive, full of purpose. When the fleet finally left Earth orbit, millions watched from below, cheering as the ships rose through the clouds and vanished into the darkness of space. Laura stood on the bridge and looked down at the fading blue world. She felt pride, but also a deep weight in her heart. She knew that somewhere out there, The old powers of the galaxy were waiting to see if humanity would stumble. She whispered quietly that they would be disappointed. Weeks into the journey, the fleet crossed into neutral space, and that was when trouble came. A group of Varnix warships appeared without warning, blocking the path to the new colony world. Their commander, General Voth, sent a message ordering the humans to turn back. He claimed that the area was under council quarantine, but Laura knew it was a lie. The aliens simply wanted to remind humanity of its place. She stood on the bridge as the message played, her crew silent. Alex looked at her and said that their weapons were ready, but that they were outnumbered 4-1. Karen's hands tightened on the controls, waiting for the order. Laura thought for a moment, then she smiled. She told Alex to open a channel to the Varnix fleet. When General Voth appeared on screen, his insect-like face sneered, his voice full of pride. He said that humans had no right to cross this sector. Laura kept her calm. She thanked him politely for his warning, and said she would pass it to the historians once she wrote the chapter about how humanity laughed at alien threats. Voth blinked, confused, and Laura continued, saying that humans did not fear rules that were made only to chain others. She told him that if they fired first, history would remember that the Varnix started a war because they could not handle laughter. There was silence for a long moment. Then Alex whispered softly that they had just told off one of the most feared warlords in the sector. Laura simply said that fear only works if you let it. For hours, the two fleets faced each other in empty space. Weapons charged but not fired, and then something strange happened. The Varnix ships turned away one by one. General Voth gave no explanation. The humans watched as the alien fleet retreated and left the path open. Alex laughed and said maybe the general didn't like being part of a joke. The bridge crew laughed with him, relief mixing with pride. They had faced one of the most powerful fleets in the galaxy, and won without firing a shot. When they reached the colony world, it was harsh and red, filled with deserts and dust storms. But the humans saw beauty in it. They named it Dawnfall, not because it was sad, but because they believed that every fall of darkness meant a new dawn waiting to rise. They built domes, towers, and greenhouses, and within months the first city shone under the alien sun. News of the event spread fast all across the galaxy. People talked about how the humans stood against the Varnix and made them back down without bloodshed. Some species admired them, others called them dangerous. But everyone remembered that humans did not respond to threats with fear. They responded with laughter and determination. Captain Laura became a symbol, her name spoken in stories told across colonies and alien bars. She hated fame but knew that it was not about her. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity had come to stay. Months later, the Council tried again to remind humans of their place, this time by passing laws to limit their expansion. But by then it was too late. The humans had allies. Small species that had once been afraid began to follow their example. They too started to question the Council's power. They started to laugh, and one by one the chains that fear had built began to break. Back on Dawnfall, as the twin suns set behind the hills, Laura stood outside the colony dome and looked at the orange sky. Children were playing, their laughter echoing through the wind. Alex came to stand beside her. He said that the galaxy was changing faster than anyone expected. Laura nodded and said that maybe laughter was more powerful than weapons. Alex smiled and said that humans always knew that. They had learned it the hard way, through wars, losses, and endless struggle, and now the stars would learn it too. The wind grew colder, and the sky darkened into a blanket of stars. Somewhere up there, the Council watched and planned its next move, but down on the ground the humans worked, laughed and dreamed. They were not afraid of what came next, because they had already proven something the galaxy had forgotten. That courage was not the absence of fear. It was the decision to smile and keep walking even when fear was loud. And as the night fell on the new world, the lights of the colony shone like tiny stars on the surface. And for the first time in that corner of the galaxy, the old powers began to feel something strange. Not fear of human weapons, but fear of human hearts. Hearts that refused to bow, and that laughed even in the face of the impossible. The meeting of the Galactic Council was held in the grand hall on the station that floated above the blue surface of the gas planet, called Veron. The leaders of more than 60 species sat around the shining circle table, and all of them looked at the large screen in front of them that showed the face of a human woman. Her name was Captain Laura Brooks. She sat in her ship's command chair, and her voice was calm as she spoke to the entire galaxy. She said that humanity would no longer accept being threatened or pushed around, that Earth and its colonies wanted peace, but they would not bow to fear. The hall went silent for a moment before hundreds of voices began to argue. Some called her brave. Others called her reckless. Some even said humans were bluffing because they were a young species and did not understand what real war meant. But a few who had seen human ships in battle knew that their courage was not a lie. When the message ended, Laura sat quietly in her chair. Her crew around her watched her face for signs of doubt, but there was none. She told them that the galaxy needed to see that humans would not run away anymore. Back on Earth, the news spread fast. Every screen and every broadcast carried her words. People in cities stopped what they were doing to watch children in schools, clapped soldiers in bases, smiled scientists in labs, looked up and felt proud for once. The galaxy would see that humanity was not weak. Humanity had been patient too long. As the words traveled through the stars, some alien governments began to prepare fleets. They thought they could still scare humans by showing bigger ships and larger weapons on Mars. Engineers worked day and night to strengthen defenses on the moon. Builders expanded the shipyards, and in the orbit above Earth, 3 large fleets came together. Humans called them the shield fleets. Their purpose was not to start war but to make sure no one brought war to them. Captain Brooks was ordered to meet the alien ambassador from the Talic Empire who had come to speak for peace, but everyone knew it was not really peace they wanted. They wanted humans to kneel. She walked into the room where the tall gray alien waited. His golden eyes blinked slowly as he said that humanity should stand down and agree to the Council's rule that it was better to be part of the system than to stand alone. She smiled politely and said that Earth had been alone before and survived storms that would have destroyed others. She said they learned to stand because no one came to help them. The alien frowned and said that resistance would bring destruction. She leaned closer and said softly that humans had lived with destruction all their lives and it never stopped them. Before the alien said nothing more and left in silence. In deep space near the border of the Archon sector, a small human exploration fleet was stopped by a group of alien warships. The alien said humans were violating the Council's travel rules. The human captain named Daniel Ross told them they were exploring unclaimed space and had every right to be there. The aliens fired warning shots, but the humans did not move. Daniel ordered his fleet to activate shields and hold position. The aliens fired again, this time to destroy, but the human ships moved fast, dodging and returning fire with sharp accuracy. The alien fleet was larger but less coordinated, and after a long battle they pulled back, shocked that small human ships could outmaneuver them. The news of this spread fast and the galaxy began to whisper. Maybe the humans were not bluffing after all. On Earth, the Council tried to send warnings saying humans were making a mistake, but now, even some alien traders who visited human space began to admire them. They said humans smiled even in danger. They joked in battle and sang when others would cry. One trader said he saw human soldiers sharing food with alien refugees they had rescued from pirates, even though those same aliens once voted to ban humans from trade routes. Stories like these began to change hearts across the stars. Captain Brooks received a message from the President of Earth telling her to prepare for any outcome, but also to remember that they fought not for revenge but for dignity. She gathered her crew and told them that the galaxy thought they could scare humans with big ships and long threats. But fear was something humans had already lived with for thousands of years. They had feared hunger. They had feared cold. They had feared the dark. Yet they had survived all of it because they learned to laugh in the face of fear. Her crew smiled. They all knew that laughter was not mockery, but strength. When everything seems impossible, laughter means you still believe you can win. A few days later, the Galactic Council decided to send a combined fleet to orbit near Earth as a show of power. They said it was only for observation, but everyone knew it was intimidation. Human satellites saw them first, huge ships from many species forming a wall in space. Millions on Earth looked up and saw strange lights in the sky. Instead of fear, there was wonder. People walked out of their homes to see the foreign ships shining above them. Some cheered, some waved flags in defiance. The governments told everyone to stay calm, but humanity as a whole did not panic. Captain Brooks was ordered to hold position near the edge of Earth's orbit. Her fleet was outnumbered 20-1, still she stood firm. The alien commander of the fleet sent a message demanding surrender. Brooks replied with one sentence. She said, "If you want to scare us, you are too late, Because we stopped being scared long ago. The alien commander hesitated. He had faced many enemies, but never one that smiled while being surrounded. Human fleets powered up weapons but did not fire first for hours. Both sides stared at each other across the dark space, and then the alien fleet withdrew without a fight because they realized that no amount of threats could break a spirit that refused to bend. In the days that followed, the galaxy was confused. The council held emergency meetings, asking why the humans had not been crushed. The answer was simple. The humans were not fighting for domination. They were fighting for respect, and no empire can destroy that. The laughter of humanity echoed across every transmission. Their music, their humor, their courage. It spread faster than any weapon, and even those who once feared them began to feel inspired. The galaxy that once tried to intimidate humanity now watched in awe. Captain Brooks looked out of her ship's window at the stars. She whispered that maybe one day they would not need fleets or threats, that maybe one day the galaxy would learn what humans had always known, that the only way to stop fear is to face it together. Her crew nodded silently around her. Earth glowed bright below them, and in that light there was something unbreakable, something that could not be conquered. And in that moment she knew that humanity had already won, not through power, not through war, but through courage and laughter. The days after the Great Standoff changed everything across the stars. As news of the alien fleet retreating spread through every world, it reached planets that had never heard of humans before, and it became a story told in markets, in schools, and in military bases. Some said it was impossible that such a small species could make so many powerful empires back down. Others said it was luck, but those who had met humans in person knew it was not luck. They said humans were different. They did not act the way others did when faced with fear. They laughed, and when they laughed they became stronger, and that confused those who tried to break them. Captain Laura Brooks sat in her command chair on the bridge of her ship, looking at reports. From the outer colonies, messages of hope and pride filled her screen. People from every corner of human space wanted to join the defense fleets. Volunteers signed up in millions. Even though they knew it could mean death, they were tired of being treated like prey, and wanted to stand as one for the first time in history. The scattered nations of Earth and the colonies spoke with one voice. Meanwhile, in the grand halls of the Galactic Council, tension grew. The alien delegates argued louder than ever. Some wanted to attack humanity before it became stronger. Others wanted to start peace talks. They feared that continued aggression would only make humans more determined. One elder from the Vroth species said he once studied human history, and he warned the council that every time humans were cornered, they came out stronger. He reminded them that humans survived ice ages, plagues and wars that lasted centuries. He said they adapt faster than any known species, and that their strength came not from power but from unity and courage. Some ignored him. Others listened in silence as the room grew heavy with worry. On Earth, life was different now. The people walked with new confidence. Children played pretending to be starship captains. Fighting off alien fleets, artists painted murals of human ships standing against the stars. And even those who once doubted their leaders began to believe again. Factories worked day and night to build more ships, and research stations pushed technology forward faster than ever before. Yet through all of this, there was no hatred in their hearts, only determination. Captain Brooks was invited to speak before the United Earth Council in person. For the first time, she stood on the stage where once politicians had spoken about fear and limits, and she told them that laughter was not about mocking others. It was about courage. It was about not letting fear win. She said the galaxy expected them to run or beg, but instead they smiled. Because that is what humans do when the world tries to crush them. They stand together and they smile, and that smile is stronger than any weapon. The hall erupted in cheers, and even soldiers who had faced death before felt tears in their eyes because they understood every word. In deep space, the first new generation of human ships launched. They were faster and smarter, and built with help from alien engineers who had secretly come to Earth to learn from them. Yes, some aliens wanted to help humanity, not because they feared them, but because they were inspired by them. One of them was a young scientist from the gentle Veth species named Aaron. He told Captain Brooks that he once believed humans were dangerous, but now he saw that their danger came from their courage and their heart. He said his people had lost that long ago and he wanted to learn how to find it again. She smiled and said, "Courage is not something you find. It is something you make when you choose not to give up." And that day Aaron asked to serve on a human ship to see that courage with his own eyes. The Galactic Council soon realized that humanity was not isolated anymore. Smaller species who had been bullied for years began to reach out. They sent small fleets or trade ships to make contact. They said they wanted to learn from humans how to stand up for themselves, and humanity welcomed them not as tools, but as friends and partners. And slowly the balance of power in the galaxy began to shift. The great empires that had ruled through fear started to feel uneasy, because their fear no longer worked even within their own people. Whispers of human courage spread. There were stories of alien soldiers who painted human flags on their armor before going into battle, saying it made them brave. Some even called it the human spirit. Captain Brooks and her crew became symbols of that spirit. They traveled to distant colonies, showing presence where others were afraid to go. In one system called Ronai, they found a small mining colony under attack by pirates. The pirates expected them to flee, but instead the human ship dropped out of warp and charged straight at them. The pirates outnumbered them 5-1, but the humans fought without hesitation. Their laughter and calm voices filled the communication channels, as if battle was only another storm to ride out. When the pirates finally ran away, the colonists cheered and called them heroes, but Brooks said they were not heroes. They were reminders that no one should live in fear anymore. Back on Earth, a monument was built in the capital city, a simple statue of a human figure looking up at the stars with a smile, not of arrogance, but of hope. Beneath it were words that said, "Fear ends when we laugh together." People from across the world came to see it. Even some aliens visited and stood quietly before it. No one spoke because everyone understood what it meant. Meanwhile, the Council tried one last time to control the situation. They sent a message to Earth offering an alliance, but with strict conditions that would again place humans under supervision. The reply was simple and direct: humanity would work with the galaxy, but never under anyone again. In time, human culture began to spread across other worlds. Music, movies, art, all filled with that same message, that same spark. Aliens began to sing human songs and tell human jokes and even dance to human rhythms. What once was strange became something beautiful. The laughter that started on one small world now echoed across the galaxy, and the powers that once ruled by fear started to lose their grip, because their people had tasted something new and they did not want to lose it. As months passed, Captain Brooks stood again at the window of her ship looking at the stars. She saw peace forming. Where once there had been war, she thought about all the people who had stood their ground when it mattered, and she felt proud. Not because they had won any war, but because they had changed. Something bigger than war. They had shown that courage and kindness were stronger than intimidation. The galaxy had tried to scare them, but humanity laughed, and in that laughter, they found freedom. The stars were calm again after many long years of tension. The galaxy was quiet, but it was not the same galaxy as before, because now there was a new kind of power moving between the worlds. It was not made of warships or armies. It was made of stories. People across hundreds of planets spoke about humanity, the species that had faced fear with laughter and turned weakness into strength. Captain Laura Brooks had become a legend, even among those who had never met her. She was now the face of a new alliance, one that humans had built, not through force but through trust. The United Alliance of Free Worlds was formed under her leadership, and it brought together many races that once hid in fear of the larger empires. They came together, not because they wanted protection, but because they wanted to share courage for the first time. The galaxy had hope built not on threats, but on unity. On Earth, cities glowed with life. People worked together like never before. There was a sense of pride that filled the air, and it spread to the colonies and to every human ship that sailed among the stars. They had fought not with hate, but with spirit, and that spirit had become something greater than all their technology. Captain Brooks walked along the observation deck of her flagship. The horizon, she looked out at the blue world below it, was Earth, home and heart of everything that mattered. She remembered the days when she had stood here ready for war, but now she stood ready for peace. Beside her walked Aaron, the alien scientist who had joined her crew long ago. He told her that his people were changing too, that laughter had returned to their homes, that they had begun to dream again. She smiled softly and said that maybe that Was the real victory far away? The old powers were breaking apart. The empires that once ruled by fear found their fleets shrinking. Their people no longer obeyed blindly, because they had seen another way. They saw humans standing proud even when surrounded, and they realized fear was not strength, it was weakness in disguise. One by one, smaller worlds declared independence. Some joined the alliance, others chose to stand alone, but no one wanted to live under fear again. And that was the greatest change of all. One day, a message reached Earth from the Galactic Council. It was a message not of threat, but of apology. They said the galaxy had judged humans too quickly, that they had mistaken kindness for weakness and laughter for arrogance. They asked for peace and partnership. Captain Brooks was chosen to answer. She appeared on every screen across the galaxy and spoke simply. She said that humans were ready to forgive because they had never wanted war. She said they wanted a galaxy where no one had to be afraid of anyone ever again. She said the past would be remembered but not repeated, and her words spread across the stars like light through darkness. Meanwhile, in deep space, explorers from Earth and the Alliance began to travel further than ever before. They reached systems that had never been mapped. They found ruins of ancient civilizations and strange life forms. But wherever they went, they carried the same spirit of humanity, curiosity, kindness, and laughter. And wherever they landed, they shared it. They helped build homes. They healed the sick, and they taught others that no matter how far you go, you are never truly alone if you have the courage to smile in the face of the unknown. Years passed and the galaxy changed. Even more, the old fears faded. Trade routes opened between species that had once been enemies. Even the great empires that had once tried to crush humanity now traded peacefully with Earth. They sent gifts of art and technology, and humans gave them stories and music. In return, human songs were played on alien worlds, and alien children grew up dreaming of visiting Earth, the planet that laughed at fear. The Alliance grew stronger, not through control, but through understanding, and it became the foundation of a new era. Captain Brooks grew older, but she continued to serve. She visited schools and young cadets who wanted to be like her. She told them that courage was not the absence of fear. It was the choice to move forward, even when you are afraid. She said that laughter was not about ignoring danger. It was about remembering that fear does not own you one day. As she stood once again at the window of her ship watching the stars, she felt peace. She thought of all the people who had stood with her, all the soldiers, all the scientists, all the dreamers, and she knew that they had done something no army had ever done. They had changed the way the galaxy thought. On one distant world where humans had just built their first colony, an alien child asked his teacher why humans laughed when others would cry. The teacher smiled and said, because laughter is a promise that no darkness lasts forever. And the child smiled too and said, then we should laugh more. And in that moment, the spirit of humanity lived on, not just on Earth but everywhere. Back on Earth, a great celebration was held marking 10 years of peace. People filled the cities, music echoed through the streets, and lights danced across the sky. Captain Brooks was invited to speak once more, but this time she spoke from her heart. She said that once the galaxy tried to scare humanity into silence, but instead it woke them up. She said that fear can only rule if you let it, and that the human heart had learned the greatest secret, that even in the coldest void of space, warmth can exist if you choose to share it. She ended her speech with a laugh, and the sound of that laugh spread through every screen and every speaker. And everyone who heard it laughed, too, not out of amusement but out of hope. That night she returned to her ship and looked out one last time at the stars. Aaron stood beside her and asked her if she thought the galaxy would ever truly be free of fear. She said, maybe not completely, but that was not the point. She said the point was that now everyone knew how to fight it, and it could never control them again. The stars shone brighter that night, and she felt that somewhere out there, others were watching and smiling too, as the horizon drifted quietly through the dark. The crew gathered on the bridge. They did not speak much. They simply looked out and felt the peace they had all helped create. One young officer said softly that it felt like the universe was breathing again. Brooks smiled and said, maybe it is because for the first time it is not holding its breath in fear anymore. And so the story of humanity became more than just a tale of survival. It became a light in the dark, a reminder that courage can start small, But grow beyond measure, the galaxy had tried to intimidate humanity. But humanity laughed instead, and that laughter became the sound of freedom that would never fade.